So I was first inspired by this artist right here, Stu Zor. I think that's how you say his name. It was made in Unreal Engine. He's an awesome artist, and it really inspired me to make my animation. So first I started with going into Photoshop and sketching out just a sketch of the assets that I wanted to make, how they're gonna look, and just breaking everything down. So I drew out a figure with the cloth, a sketch of the woods and the composition of how I wanted the trees to look, and then a bit of brainstorming on how the character was going to animate and come out of the ground and everything like that. So in Blender, I brought in a object of a person, and then in edit mode, I grabbed the parts that were specifically not the joint areas and elongated those using the proportional editing tool. Once I had them at a height that I thought was like creepy and tall, I set up a ground plane, made that a collision, made the guy a collision, and then put a plane above his head and made that a cloth object. So Blender's cloth is very finicky. It's not perfect, and it can kind of, put bluntly, can be a pain in the ass sometimes working with it. You can see like after an hour of rendering and baking this one simulation, this was the result. Yeah. Not fun, especially because when it glitches like this, it takes like twice or 3 times as long to render. So you think it's going to be like this really great render, but you come back and it's broken. So after tweaking the settings just back and forth, I eventually landed on this, and I was really happy with that. Next, I went into straight building out the environment because, again, I have my sketch. I knew what the camera needed to see, and I just started building out from there. I'm using this add-on called Botanic, and it is an add-on that lets you just, it's like one-click vegetation. And it has a bunch of these presets and settings and seasons and everything like that. It's really, really good. So I use that to populate pretty much the whole scene. I click on the plane, spawn different grass types, forest floors, all these things, and then adjust them as needed and whatever looks appropriate. I thought this arrangement looked perfect for me. And then I also used it to bring in a lot of the trees. You can spawn these trees in there, and there are all these different types. I wasn't really paying attention to the types of tree. I just wanted something with a bark, like a long tree trunk. That was just what inspired me, and that was how I was imagining. Like when I think of a scary forest, I think of this just vast space, pitch black or dark, with really skinny trees everywhere. You don't really see like bushy, beautiful trees. You just see these kind of like tree trunks, and it's creepy looking that way. After I placed all the trees and all of the ground assets, I also went into Polyhaven, the Polyhaven add-on, and they also have a lot of really good free foliage, like tree stumps and tree logs, and even their tree assets in Polyhaven are geometry nodes based, so like really customizable, pretty amazing stuff for being free. I then filled out a little bit more of the environment, broke up the horizon line, and just kind of filled it out a little bit more with these bush assets from Botanic. So once I had the environment and a place that I was really happy with, the next step is to start setting up the camera animation, which is like a big part of this whole thing, and the lighting. Because I think the lighting is a big part of why this looks realistic, why this looks creepy. And the idea was to have the camera feel like a phone camera. So it's in portrait mode. Also, when you have the light, it's like attached to your hand. And that's kind of the look I was going for. And the way I did that was I took an area light, made it a circle, brought down the spread so it wasn't just like this big floodlight, and also bringing down the spread made it a little bit more intense in the center. And I parented that to the camera. And then all I would have to do is animate the camera, and the light would follow it. The way I animated the camera was I first did it linearly. So camera starts here, and then the location of it goes from here to here to here. Once I had the location paced out in the way that I liked, I went in almost like a second pass and did only the rotations. A little bit further ahead, rotated slightly up, and then more up, and then down, and so on until I liked the flow of the location and the rotation of the camera. I did give it like a bit of a spaz at the end when the cloth figure comes fully across it. And so in this case, I knew it was just going to be a basic jump scare, cut to black. So it really didn't matter what the camera did at the end. So as I kept messing with it, I leaned more into the idea of it being a phone, and I imagined like it'd be really cool if it seemed like it fell on the ground. So I kind of started messing with that and got to a place that I was happy with it spinning around, spazzing, falling down. I mess with the lighting a lot. I really had to tweak the settings and try a bunch of different varieties of lighting to get the perfect amount of fall off. Sometimes I parented a spotlight, sometimes it was an area light, sometimes it was two area lights, all kinds of stuff. I really just experimented a ton. So there was this balance of making it feel real, making it look good, and making the environment, not hiding it too much. So I came up with this perfect balance of attaching two lights. One was like the core light, and then one that was a slightly higher light that just filled in some more of the black space because the fall off wasn't soft enough, and adding the second light helped make that fall off a little bit more gradual. And then after a couple of test renders, I was really happy with the result. I liked the way the light was interacting with everything. I thought it felt realistic. But anytime I'm working on a render in an environment and it just feels a little too empty, even though I literally have everything I want in there, I just throw in a volumetric. The volumetric just, I don't know, fills in these gaps or whatever in the scene. It's like adding noise or grain over top of your render or your animation. So I brought in a cube, added volumetric scatter to it, and just tweaked the settings again a little bit just to get it subtle enough, but not too strong that made it look right. I did notice that the lighting was actually creating this focused point in the volumetrics, which makes sense. In real life, you would get that. And then I noticed something. Because the lights are parented to the camera, they're bright as hell right there. And the camera is completely blown out. You don't see anything because the lights are right in front of it. So I went into the lights. If you scroll down to visibility, ray visibility, you could uncheck volume scatter. And then the volume is still there in the environment, but the lights are like not noticing it. So that ended up really saving the day for me. And then I did a couple still test renders, tweaking things here and there in the composition, making sure everything was good at the end. And after letting it render for overnight, this was the result. Well, hope you enjoyed that video and I hope you learned something. If you have any questions, definitely leave them down in the comments below. Thanks to my patrons for the constant support. Thanks to my Instagram subscribers for the constant support. If you want bonus content, assets, 3D assets, tutorials, full processes, just extra stuff, I'm doing a video on Patreon right now about how I did the sound design for this video, which I think is something new for me and kind of an interesting process if you're curious about stuff like that. Don't forget to like, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your mom, tell your dad. I'll see you next one. Peace.